feeling so far about Capstone, folks? How are you feeling so far about Capstone? Oh shit, somebody had to go to Calgary just to upgrade his GPU. Damn. I'm scared. Oh no, dude, like 6 servers compared to 16. I think it's a lot easier, right? Definitely a lot of configuration. So what happens, just so you know, with a group, one of the biggest things, one of the challenges that you'll see in a group implementation, you guys will have enough time because we'll go through the calendar. So I updated the calendar, I updated the course layout on Brightspace. I'll also talk a little bit about the details of the business case, like in terms of design and layout and topology. And we'll show you also the implementation and what does that entail. Sorry, the planning, the implementation, and of course um, the documentation. So we'll talk about that today as well. But so one of the things that you will experience when you're going through, or I should say, if you were in a group, one of the things is you're like you have to do it. So with a group implementation, all VMs. So you know when you're picking up when you're setting up your virtual machine, you pick VMnet 1, VMnet 2, which network, which virtual network do you belong to, right? So that you'll see that during the setup process. Some people pick NAT, and some people pick say host only. So all the virtual machines in a group implementation, you have to bridge them. So typically in a group, students will go buy a small switch, one of those like $25. You get them from Best Buy. You got a switch. You got cables. So you see cables connected in the classroom. So all the laptops are connected through like network cables, and they're connected to a switch. And so all their VMs, the way they talk to each other, they're all bridged. So bridging means like the virtual machine really acts as if it's sitting physically on your network, right? So that's what bridging is. And so all virtual machines are bridged, and so what happens is some people have a problem with their network card. And so what do? They say, oh, there's no built-in network card in my laptop. I only have USB or USB-C or whatever it is. Plugs available or so ports available on my computer. And so they go get one of those dongles and then they plug it into their laptop. Of course, the other end is the network cable port. And that's how they connect. And it is just so glitchy. It is just sometimes if you just touch the cable a little bit wrong, it just disconnects. And while people are trying to run synchronization, oh, they have to restart over. They have to start over. And then it's just it can get a little bit tough. And so when you're doing things alone on your own computer, because everything is virtualized on your own VMware, you can control um, the integration, right? So you can, and it's also a lot faster, by the way, because it's all local on your computer versus if you do it actually on a network, like through that switch and everybody, and you're doing running integration, oh, it takes a very long time. Yeah. So there is a benefit to doing things also alone. Again, 6 servers for you compared to 16. It's a lot easier. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about ooh, that 4090 is nice. Someone just sent me a picture. Oh, that's looking good. Whew. Carson, that's nice, man. All right, so let's go to Brightspace. I'm going to share my screen. We'll talk about some of the changes I have made. We'll go also through the course calendar. We'll go through the grading structure as well, and we'll do a little bit. We'll have a discussion on the expectation and the topology of your implementation. So let's do that. Where is the screen sharing? Screen sharing is right here and right there. Okay. So here's what we have. This is our beautiful course page on Brightspace. Sometimes you'll see people refer to Brightspace as D2L, right? So D2L is like the developer title for Brightspace, and you're just basically saying the same thing. So you can call it Brightspace, you can call it D2L. They all refer to the same thing. All right, so this is our course page on Brightspace. Again, if I click on content, one of the first things we're going to go through today is the layout that we have on Brightspace. So let me, if you guys want to see the layout as well, so I've updated some of the documentation. So if you open up the course introduction, okay, let's download this guy. See how it's so much faster here when you're doing it at home? Because so trying to access, by the way, Brightspace from the wireless network that you have in the classroom, it is very slow. And it almost gives you the vibe that you're running on like 10 megabit per second. Like this is really extremely slow. Even the pictures when they get loaded, it's like on stages, like it just it takes its time when it's loading up. I'm like, whoa, there is a lot of load on that network, on that internet pipe, right? Coming out of NATE. And so that's why it's just taken a very long time to load things. And so it's honestly a blessing that we are running the session right now from home using our home internet. I believe my network speed here at home, internal, like within my I have Cat6 cables running throughout my house. And of course, my pipe to the internet is, I believe it's 1 gig. I'm running 1 gig, which is the highest in our area. If there's anything higher, I'll probably sign up. So I updated. So it is a blessing to run the session from home, just so we don't have any delays when we are getting through Brightspace. Okay, so I updated some documents in here last night based on our discussion. So I'm going to go through project phases. So I'm going to go through this. We did talk about other things like the hardware requirements and the expectation. And so normally we start off this way and then we talk about the business case. But again, like I said yesterday, I was doing some updates on Brightspace. So let's talk about the project phases. So just so keep in mind, we have 4 phases in the project. We're going to look at the expectation for all those phases, and also the grade distribution as well. So the first phase is the project initiation phase, and there's only one deliverable over there, and that is the project charter. So if you go on to the next page, you'll see the first deliverable here. That's your project charter. Second phase is your planning phase, and that is you have to do 4 submissions. I know it says 3 here, but they're actually 4 because the network diagram, there are 2 submissions. Now, of course, before we get into any of those, before we get into like looking at those submissions, we are going to go through the templates for you to fill out. And then you submit those. We're going to look at samples as well, just so you're familiar and you're not far off from your submission. So somebody's asking me, what grades do we get for our documentation? If you do it based on expectation, and you'll have tons of opportunity to make changes. In fact, you won't have an option. You have to make the changes because I'm going to have a one-on-one with you. I'm going to say, change this now. So I'll be with you online while you're making the change, right? So there is very little room for error in there. So that's why, for the most part, you pretty much get a full score on phase 1 and phase 2. I pretty much pick on you on phase 3. That's when I pick on you. Okay, so you submit those. Of course, there is a grading rubric and everything for those phases, just for from a formality point of view. But the way I see it, if you get the work done, you just get your score and we move on. So four phases. So phase one, the first deliverable is the project charter. The diagram, you have to do two diagrams. One is the physical layout diagram, and the other one is your Active Directory logical diagram. Again, when you get to that stage, I'm going to show you samples just so you know. And then you set up your project schedule, and then you submit your project schedule, and then you submit your risk register. And then you start with the implementation. So in the implementation, there are two parts. That is part one and part two. We're going to talk about the details of part one and part two here shortly, but there are two implementations that you have to do, or I should say the implementation is broken down into two parts. The first part is the foundation. So that is setting up your router, setting up your VMs, setting up your Active Directory, making sure that replication works well, and then doing a little bit of your Active Directory group policies. So this is all the foundation that you need to do to complete part one. And then you start getting into part two, and that is setting up your certificates, setting up your Linux or SharePoint, whichever you pick. And then there's something else on there. Oh, and that is your DFS setup as well. So that is your network services for DFS, like your shared folders that are accessible throughout your forest. And then you get into so that is again, we're going to get into the details here shortly, and then we talk about the documentation. So that's documentation only on your implementation, and that is part one and part two. And then at the end we do the project closure. Project closure is just one document that you have to fill, and that's it. It's really easy. So like you'll see things like that in the project closure. Hey, if you had to do this project again, how would you approach it differently? What recommendations would you give to other colleagues who are coming to Capstone? Like that's just your project closure. It's really just lessons learned. That's what you add in your project closure. Again, really the documentation is not very heavy, except this part over here. So the infrastructure documentation, that's a little bit heavy there because it includes a lot of configuration. Okay, just looking at the grade structure and grade distribution. So what we have here, we'll come to status reports here shortly. Phase one, the first submission is worth 5%. Phase two, that is your network diagram. Again, there are two parts in your network diagram. That's worth 5%. So you submit both, like you put it in a zip file and then you submit it. And then, of course, your project schedule is 5%. Your risk register is 5%. So that's 15% for phase two. So phase one is 5%. Phase two is 15%. Phase three is 70%. This is most of the work that you'll have to do. Okay, this also gets reflected in your schedule because that takes a long time to do and to complete. That's why you'll have a lot of time to do that in your when you look at the project schedule, which we're going to look at here shortly. And of course, phase four, and that is 5%. That's the lessons learned that I talked about, right? Now, remember, as you are going through your implementation, there'll be some status reports that you'll have to submit. You submit them once every 2 weeks. So it's like bi-weekly submission. And in your status reports, then you'll have to include what is it that you have completed, what do you have next coming up in your configuration, right? And so normally what you have to do, and this is something I've seen in Capstone, when you're doing your implementation, make sure it matches your schedule. Okay, just make sure it matches your schedule. So because you're going to follow the schedule and you're going to follow the network diagram. So network diagram tells you to do what that's what you're going to do during implementation. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at the course calendar. Num, num, num. Num, num, num. So we looked at the business case yesterday. We're going to go through it today briefly, just to put the topology together, just so you guys have an idea of what that looks like. But we are going to approach it together, sort of, until we get to the implementation phase. Okay. Let's look at the course calendar, our schedule, and that is right here. So let's just download this guy. Open it up. Okay, so here is what we have for for our calendar. So is that an ice cream truck? I think it's an ice cream truck. I want an ice cream. You guys remember that? When we were kids, the ice cream truck comes in, you're just chasing him around. I got $5. Oh my God. All right, so so here's the project schedule. Um, yeah, that is the ice cream truck. That's hilarious. Why is he coming right now? This kids are at school. Jeez. Um, that's hilarious. Um, okay, so sorry, let me just go and check. Um, there you go. So, so this is the this is the course calendar. So here's what we have on our first day. We did business case and we had an introduction. Um, on Friday we talk. So this is Friday. We're going to talk about project phases. We're also reviewing the grading structure. So next week on Monday, that's when we start. So we have the project charter. This is what we also talked about in the presentation. And then you submitted the next class. And then after that, we start looking at network diagram. The network diagram will take a little bit longer for you to complete because there are two diagrams that you have to make. And then you submit it, of course, on Thursday. When you submit it on Thursday, you start your project schedule. So if you noticed, all the submissions and the activities that you begin, they're all back to back. So there is no gap in between for like lab periods. There is no such thing. Everything is back to back submission. You will probably take the entire time just to complete your diagram. Okay, so you start your project schedule. You keep going on about you go on about your project schedule until you eventually submit it, and then you start your risk register, and then you submit your risk register. And this is when I start doing review with you guys. So I'll do one-on-one review with each student. This is before we go on the long weekend. So the September 30th, I'm sure you guys were told that is the Truth and Reconciliation Day. We were told it's going to be a day off, so there are no classes on the 30th of September. So just so you guys know, and that's good. So after when we come back from that long end, then we can start the implementation. Right. So on September 30th, I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to say, no, don't do this. Change that. Change this. Change this. Call me back when you finish, just so you can get your grade. Otherwise, you don't get your grade. So just so you know, for phase 1 and 2, you are not going to get your grade until you meet with me and make the changes based on the feedback. So in some cases, students will make the feedback on the spot saying, can we do the feedback or can we make the change right now? If the change is minor, I'll say, yeah, go ahead, make the change. And then they finish everything, they submit it on Brightspace, and then they get the grade right away on Brightspace, okay? So when you start your implementation, so just look at this. When you start your implementation, you're pretty much on your own. Okay, you're on your own. Now, you come to me when something is not clear in the business case, or you want to do something in your business case, or you want some clarification on your direction. I can help you with that, but not your configuration. For example, you come to me saying, Sami, so for the group setup that I have to do in my Active Directory, should I follow this style? Shall I do this? This is what I saw on Microsoft website. So then I'll tell you, okay, you need to create a group for this and this and this. For your permissions, this is what you need to do for your permissions. I'll give you high level information. I'm not going to give you the details. No. So you need to know how to do that, right? So like I said, I do not touch your keyboard and mouse. You should know how to do that at this point. So what I've seen students, they do during their setup process, during the configuration, they use ChatGPT. In some cases, ChatGPT does not give the accurate answers. So just be careful. So just be careful. Um, so you start your implementation. So if I zoom out a little bit, you will see that you have from week 5 all the way to week 13. That's your implementation right here. Okay, so that's your implementation. Now, here's what's going to happen. That doesn't mean I'm going to disconnect from you. No. In fact, what's going to happen is that there will be a schedule. So I'm going to put a schedule up. That schedule will tell you what's the frequency of our meeting. Because I'm going to meet with you during scheduled class time. I'm going to tell you, okay, so where are you at in your project? What are you doing so far? Oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. This is the configuration. I'm going to tell you, okay, show me what you did so far. As soon as you start opening up virtual machines, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to say, okay, you're good then. I'm going to move on to the next student, right? So they'll be like what we call checkpoints. So those are checkpoints. So checkpoints are not available in the calendar. I'm going to make another document just to clarify when the checkpoint is going to be. The checkpoint is going to be during implementation. So from week 5 all the way to week 13, you will have checkpoints with me. Do you guys hear it? It's the ice cream truck, yeah. This ice cream truck is getting me excited. So anyway, there'll be a checkpoint. So on checkpoints, I'll tell you, okay, show me what you have done so far. It's just brief. It's not, I'm not gonna look at the details of everything. You just show me briefly what you've been doing, right? We just have a discussion. You say, yep, I am good. I am in the right direction. I am definitely on track. Okay, you're done. Thank you. And move on to the next student, right? So this is what we call checkpoint. So during implementation, there'll be a checkpoint. I'm going to post a schedule on Brightspace just so you guys know. When the time comes for checkpoint, you need to be available. Make yourself available. It'll be during class time anyways. Okay, so make yourself available. It won't take time. And then I'll tell you also during that day who I'm going to meet with first and what is the time frame. So you'll see all of that as well, just so it's all clear for everybody. Um, let's see here. So after during implementation, so you start your implementation here, going all the way down here. So that's how many weeks? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you have 9 weeks of implementation. That is enough time for you to set up 6 virtual machines, maybe 7. Do all the configuration. Remember, this is not just a setup. This is not just installation. You need to do configuration too. There's a lot of configuration you have to do. Okay, so for you to do 9 weeks is enough. Honestly, like if you can't get it done in 9 weeks, it's questionable, right? What happened to the ice cream truck? Oh no. From the heat. So what happens after 9 weeks? There is a demo with an instructor. So I'm going to put a schedule up for me to do official review. So this is when I start getting into the details now of your configuration and also your outcome. For example, let me give you an example. So when we come closer to the demo date, I'm going to tell you, so I'm going to have a session with, I'm going to have a session with everybody. I'm going to say, okay, we need to have a meeting to discuss the demo and how does the demo review goes. And so I'm going to say, okay, show me your configuration. I'm going to say, okay, how can did you test this configuration? How did you test it? How did you know if it works? But keep that in mind. If you made the configuration without the testing, to me, that just looks like you have not done anything. So you get a 0. So just be careful. Don't just make configuration and walk away hoping that it will work. So don't make that assumption because that's 0 flat out. Like you get a 0. I don't give partial marks. So just so you know, there are no partial marks. We're going to talk about the grading and the grading structure here shortly because I'll walk you through it as well. Just so you know, there are no partial marks. You either have done it or not. If you have not done it, you get a 0. We move on to the next task. Right? But I have done the configuration. I've done this. No. That's not relevant. It's a yes or no question, right? So reason why we do this is because really what's happening here is that you're acting as a consultant for that business case that we looked at. So when you're a consultant and you're trying to show client what you have done, you don't say, but I tried to do this, give me my money. You're not going to get paid. That's what's going to happen, right? You're not going to get paid. So it doesn't matter. So that's the idea over here in this project. You're really acting as a consultant. So when we do, some students may finish earlier. So you may finish earlier. That's totally fine. If you finish earlier, there is something called a soft review. So a soft review, again, we're going to get into the details as if we're doing official review. We're going to go through the same process, and I'm going to tell you, this is what your grade looks like now after we finish. This is some feedback for you to go and make changes. You may choose not to make those changes. So somebody may get, like, say, for example, just an example, somebody may get 70%, just an example. I give them feedback. It's okay, you got 70%. This is what you need to do. During the official review date, you only show me the delta, like the changes that you have made. You don't do the full review with me again. You don't. You only show me the delta, like only the things that I gave you feedback on, only those things that you're going to show, because I'm going to keep track. I'm going to keep a record of everything that when we do the soft review, right? It's just so during the official review, it's a lot easier. Okay, so you may choose to do a soft review. So I'll give you your soft grade. I'll tell you, this is what your grade looks like. During the official review date, official review week with me, so it starts on December 2nd and it goes to December 9th. So we have 4 classes. So I'll have to meet with 5 students in every class, right? In every across those 4 sessions. I have to meet 5 students. So it will be time consuming. So just keep that in mind. It'll take about an hour because we're going to look at everything. Okay. So during the official review date, you say, you know what, Sami, I did not make the changes based on the feedback that you gave me. I will take the soft grade that you gave me, make that permanent on Brightspace. I say, okay, if that's what you want, that's what you want. So the soft grade then becomes permanent. That's what happens. If you made the change based on the feedback that I gave you, or did some of them at least, then that also adds to your grades, right? It just it will beef up your grades a little bit better, right? So it totally depends on what changes you make. So this is very common that I have seen previously with a lot of groups. They do have, a lot of them do the soft review with me. Normally they do it a week before the official review week. They do a soft review with me and then I give them a feedback. And then during the official review, we just look at the delta and that's it. So some students may say, you know what? Oh, I got 95%. Okay, yeah, I'm not making changes based on that, based on the feedback. Please. So sometimes that happens during the soft review saying, don't wait during the official review, make it permanent now. Okay, if that's what you want, then that's what you want. It's up to you. So we'll do it. So there is some flexibility here. There is opportunity for feedback is what I'm trying to say, right? So totally up to you, like how you want to do this. Okay, then we have, of course, we finish phase 3, that's you submit your documentation, and of course, phase 4, right? And then so what you'll notice here is that as soon as we start the implementation, there is checkpoints, and the checkpoints, those are the status report checkpoints that I talked about. This is different than the checkpoints that you're going to have with me, like on camera. That's different. Okay, so this is the status report checkpoint. So every 2 weeks you have to submit the status report. So there is a total of 5. So we start the first week on, so that's week 5. That's when we start the implementation. The week after that, that's your first submission for the status report. 2 weeks after that, the second one, third, fourth, and then finally the 5th. Okay, so when you start your implementation, that's when you submit your status reports. Okay, so this is how the calendar is structured. Any questions so far? Anybody? Let me stop sharing and just so you guys can. Questions? Anybody? So what happens if you make changes but you like screwed up your entire network? Yeah, so the soft grade will stand. It will not change. So okay, so this is a good question. Hey, I got the feedback and I accidentally did something and I messed up my whole network. Sami, I can't. I say, okay, so then the soft grade. So when you get the soft grade for me, that's like a promise. You will get this grade, guaranteed. That's the bare minimum that you're gonna get. So that's the bare minimum. Okay. If you start making changes and you show me the changes that you have made, then your grades will change, right? It'll get better, right? But the first review that you do with me, doing the soft review, the grade that you get from me, you'll also get it in writing. So it's not just like verbally telling you, you'll also see it in writing on Microsoft Teams. Like I'll send it, this is your soft grade, this is your feedback. So you'll get the message from me. Just so you can also take a screenshot of it. Just this is like a promise. Like that's the grade you're gonna get. That's the bare minimum. If you don't pass, I'll let you know as well when we're doing the soft review. You're not passing. And I'll give you the feedback and saying to pass, this is what you need to do. So you will know. So that's why I suggest you do a soft review. I did a soft review once with somebody. So just so you know, the grading, like the way I grade is a little bit harsh, just a little bit. Um, I did a soft review with somebody and they were just on the brink of failing. And so they got 68. Six Somebody's like, isn't it 50%? Really, it's if your implementation is down to 50%, that just means you failed because a lot of things are missing from your implementation. So when we talk about implementation here shortly, I will explain what that means. So across part one and part two, if you're missing more than 3 tasks, you fail. So just keep that in mind, hey? So we have 2 parts in the implementation, part one and part two. And in each part, there is a list of tasks, right? If you miss three, you fail. So just keep that in mind. Okay, this is not just for you guys. This is how I run Capstone. This is how I run Capstone. So I know somebody also same thing, 2 parts. This is in the group implementation. So in the group implementation, it's not part one and part two. There's something called group implementation and individual implementation. Somebody in the individual implementation missed 2 tasks. And on the third one, I think it was gambling. He said, I tested it yesterday, it worked. I tested it today morning, it didn't work. I don't know what's going on. So he was just sitting on a seat. He was on he was on an edge for sure. But when we did the review, it worked. So he was missing 2 tasks. He had one more strike to go. And then so we already did a soft review with that group as well. And so we gave somebody for his individual implementation, he was missing quite a lot. And I told them they were failing. And so they have the chance to rectify that when we do the official review. They missed 2 of the tasks out of collection of them. So just keep that in mind. They passed, they got 68, I think. Anyway, so just keep that in mind during the parts one and part two. If you're missing more than 3 tasks, you fail. If you fail part one, or if you fail part two, you failed implementation, which means you failed the project too. So keep that in mind as well. Okay. Okay. So any questions? Anybody? Anybody? Questions? Anybody? Do you like ice cream? Yeah, I do. Yeah. I don't have a sweet tooth, you know, but just on hot days, yeah, I go to DQ and I get their ice cream cone dipped in chocolate. I'm not a Blizzard guy for sure. Not my thing. All right. Okay. Any questions before I get into other parts of that we need to talk about? Questions for me? Anybody? Questions so far? So you can imagine all those rules that we have in Capstone, plus trying to manage your group. Oh, that's what I'm saying. It's a lot easier to do it alone. It's a lot easier doing it alone. Because then you're in control of your own project, right? Questions so far before we get into other parts? Anybody? Going once? Going twice? No? Oh, I have a question. Have you guys tried Little Caesars pizza? Anybody? Are they good? Are they good? It's hot and it's ready. It's good for how cheap it is. All right, when it's fresh, okay. Because I like Royal Pizza. I enjoy Pizza Hut. Not Royal Pizza is nice. Domino's is like, whatever. Pizza 73 is like a cardboard box. Oh, that thing's horrible. Okay, let's talk about go back to do you guys want to take a break for 10 minutes and then come back at 2 o'clock and then keep going or you want to just keep going? You want to just keep going? Yeah, we keep going. All right, keep going. Keep the party going. Let's go. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, let's go. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Back to sharing my screen. All right, so we looked at the calendar. We saw that you have enough time for you to do the implementation. Remember the first 3 weeks over here, we will go through the templates and the documentation together. So I'm going to explain the templates. I'm going to show you an example just so you know what you're getting into when you're doing the implementation. Um, and then when you do the soft review, sorry, when you do the review with me over here for phase one and phase two, we go through your documents and make sure everything is set up correctly. And then you submit the changes on Brightspace and then you get your grade. Okay, so we went through the course calendar, we went through the grading structure. Let's look at so two things we're gonna look at as well, and that's your implementation and also the topology for your implementation. So let's go ahead and look at the implementation. So you can see grading structure for phase three, part one and part two. And of course here, that's your submission implementation part one and part two, right? So if you open up the grading structure for part one, you guys will see what you need to complete for part one. So here we go. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Like, say, for example, you messed up one of those things, like one of the implementation, one of the tasks, disable IE advanced pages and security pages excluding the IT stuff. Let's say, for example, you didn't do this. Let's say, for example, you didn't do this part. And say, for example, you didn't do this part. That's 3 strikes already, which means you failed part one. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Like, so there is a lot of your time will be testing. And that's what I'm trying, that's what I said earlier. Do not push this project till the last minute. You will struggle significantly. You will struggle significantly. Okay, so leaving this project till the last minute, oh, it will collapse. So just watch out. So there are 3 parts, of course, in part, or there are 3 subsections in part one. So that is your Active Directory forest, your Active Directory automation, and then your Active Directory administration. So the total worth is 30%. So just so you guys know. And again, remember any 3 strikes from here, you by default then fail part one. And if you fail part one or part two or both, you fail the course. So just be careful with that. Okay, so that's part one. Let's look at part two of the grading structure for the implementation. Let's download this guy. So for part two, we have our certificate services, and then we have our DFS implementation. And of course, it depends what you pick from one of those options, right? So any of those options, then if it's Linux, again, for those who don't want to upgrade their laptop or their home computer more than 32 gig, then you just go with the Linux server. This is a lot easier. Okay. The rest you'll have to upgrade, like all the way here, you'll have to upgrade. you need to have more than 32 gig of RAM to do this. Okay? Linux is a lot easier. So just so you know, you may choose to go with other open source technologies. That's also like totally depends. Like, so that's something you'll have to do on Linux. Okay? That's something you'll have to do on Linux. So just keep in mind, again, more than 3 strikes in here, you also fail part 2. All right, so you also fail part 2. And if you fail either part 1 or part 2, so just remember that you will be failing the course. So how would you fail the course? Like somebody says, how would I fail the course? Yeah, because your documentation, you're going to lose a lot of grades from your documentation because there is something missing in your documentation that you did not implement. You lose grades over there. You also lose grades in your planning phase because your project schedule says you're going to do this, but you actually did not do it, which means that doesn't match your project schedule. You lose grades in your project schedule as well. So you see what's happening here? And that's what I'm trying to say is that if you miss part 1 or part 2, you also start losing grades everywhere else because you made a promise based on your plan that you're going to do things. If you don't do it, then we have to go back to the plan and say, there's something then missing here. What's going on? It's not in alignment with your implementation. So those are all also just like making false promises, right? So again, you lose grades in there as well. So just keep that in mind when you are going through the implementation. Make sure that you test and test harder. Okay, just to make sure that you got everything covered. Any questions regarding the implementation? I'm going to stop sharing here just so we can have a discussion. Any questions regarding implementation? Questions regarding implementation? Anybody? No? So just so you guys know, Monday, when we have our class in person, for those who cannot show up, I will have a camera. I'm going to record anyways. So if you can't show up, you can join online and we can have you can join the class online. Um, we'll also be recording on Monday, yes, because we have students, like I said, that signed their employment contract. We'll be recording too. Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So it's a good way to come back and watch the recording for Monday. So next week, I suggest we record. Starting next week, I suggest we record for Capstone. Okay. Let's keep going and talk about something else, and that is your case study and the network design that you'll have to go through. So let's me go back and share my screen. This is the last thing that I want to talk about today, and then you guys can go and enjoy your weekend. And then Monday we start Monday. Okay, so back to Brightspace. So just keep in mind that for phase 1, phase 2 templates are not yet up to date. Okay. Phase 1 and phase 2 templates are not yet up to date. I need to make some changes to them, so don't use the templates yet. But like I said, we're going to go through them based on the project schedule. We will go through the template in the classroom, while we're having our online session, we're going to go through the template just to know what you need to fill out, right? And you can ask questions. And then when we're done, then you have to go and work on the template and then submit them on Brightspace, okay? So don't So I need to make changes to the templates first because it's designed for a group implementation, but we're doing solo implementation, right? Um, so that, and finally, let's go talk about the business case and talk about the design that you guys will have to go through. Okay, so we looked at it briefly in our first class. We're going to go through it again and then talk about the subnets, which is this Excel sheet. But let's go through the business case first. Look at the topology that we need to prepare. So the business case says, the business case says that you'll have to. So here's what we know so far. We know that, so let me open up Microsoft Paint. This is the poor man's whiteboard. Let's do some drawings here. So here's what we have to do. We have to set up our, so that is our domain. And this is the first one. The first one is, we called it batmanhosting.com, right? That's what we called it. Can't remember if is that the name that we used? So this is the first domain that we build in our forest. So this is going to be a domain controller. This is going to be a DC. So that's a domain controller. Okay. So DC not as in DC Comics, but DC as in domain controller. Did you call it Iron Man hosting? Oh, okay. We called it Iron Man hosting. Okay. Well, whatever it is. And so this one is called then. This one is, again, another domain controller. So this is going to be another DC, and this is going to belong to, for example, Spider-Man Design, whatever it is, .com. Okay, and then of course Spider-Man Design is going to have a child domain, and that is another domain controller over here. So this is another domain controller. So those are 3 domain controllers so far. So out of the 6 servers, 3 are right there. So this is going to be called learning.spidermandesign.com because they share the same namespace, right? If they're child domain. So it'll be the child domain dot whatever the parent namespace is, right? So that's usually how it goes. Now remember, all of them going to be in the same forest. All of them going to be in the same forest. So this is going to be your first tree, and this is going to be your second tree, right? So this is when you're setting up your Active Directory. Remember, before setting up Active Directory, of course, you have to set up your router. So let's go ahead and do the router over here. So that's your router. You'll have one interface on that router connects to this network. So there is a network over here. One of the servers is Active Directory. You'll have another interface that connects to this network. One of the servers in there is Active Directory, and a third interface here is connected to this network. One of the servers is an Active Directory domain controller. And of course, you'll have another one here that goes to the internet, right? So this is the internet. That's the internet. Okay. So what also the business case says you need to have your, all of them must be 2019. You got your GPOs, so GPOs you applied. So this is what you'll have to do with GPO just to simplify your life. Try it here first. So you'll have a Windows 10 machine over here. Okay, Windows 10 virtual machine. That's when you test your GPO on. You test your GPO on this virtual machine, okay? So that's what you're gonna have to do. The group policies that you're making. So that's all of it over here. And this configuration as well, profiles, roaming profiles. Okay, you also have to set up replication across all your domains. So again, replication, I'm gonna go like this. And of course, you go replication like this, right? So you have to set up replication, make sure everything is all good. Okay, so that is your part 1 of the implementation. Part 2 of the implementation, you have to work on your DFS. So what the best thing to do then in this case, because you're almost running out of room for virtual machines, use DFS on your domain controller. So it's a domain controller and it's also a file server at the same time, right? It makes it actually a lot easier for you also when you're doing the implementation. So then this is, oh, sorry, let me close this, go back here. So then this DNS, sorry, this is a domain controller. It is also a DNS at the same time, remember, because DNS is going to be integrated into your Active Directory. This is domain controller plus DNS plus DFS. This is going to be across all of them as well, plus DNS, plus DFS. It's the same thing, plus DNS, going to be installed by default anyways, plus DFS, right? So this is what's going to happen. So we got that part going. All right, so what do we have to do here? We have to install certificate services. So the easiest thing to do is to drop your certificate services over here. So this is going to be your CA, and we may potentially have a sub CA as well, okay? Or an offline CA if you want to call it. So this is your CA server. And of course, you have to do things. You have to create all the users using PowerShell, and you grab all the information from an Excel sheet, right? So we said that already. Now, for the other implementations, you have to pick one of the followings. Again, I'm assuming you're going to go for this. Again, you don't have to upgrade your RAM. For those who want to do other things, go for it. If you're not comfortable with Linux and you want to pick something else, the next thing that is easier is SharePoint. This is a lot easier. So just so you know, from a difficulty point of view, okay? So Linux is easier. The next one, if you have, that's again for those who have more than 32 gig RAM and they don't want to do Linux, you can do SharePoint. It doesn't matter. So whether you do Linux or SharePoint, assuming you want to put your Linux server over here on this subnet, for example, right? So this is going to be your Linux. Okay, so the only thing that you have to watch out for here, of course, is make sure that if you're using Linux for your web application, it must grab the certificate from this the CA server. That's one of the requirements. You also have to make sure that the Linux server for the employee lookup is accessible from this network. So you'll have to log into this server and make sure you can access Linux. You have to make sure you can access it from here as well. You have to make sure you can access it from a Windows 10 client. So Linux is accessible. You have to do some configuration in your DNS to make that happen. Okay, so across all those DNS servers, you have to make some configuration here on those DNS servers to make Linux reachable throughout your forest. You have to make some configuration in your DNS. So just keep that in mind. So if you're doing to do it Linux, if you want to do SharePoint, same concept again. If you are using SharePoint, you have to grab the certificate from the CA. Okay, you have to grab the certificate from the CA. So just watch out when you are making your implementation. So how many servers do we have so far? Let's count those. How many servers do we have so far? Is there anything else in here? No. So how many servers do we have so far? Let's count those. Let's pick blue. So I have 1. I got 2, 3. No, not servers. It's just the virtual machine. 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I do have 7, not 6. Okay, so it totally depends over here. You can save a little bit more RAM if you run pfSense instead of Windows. By the way, if you're running Windows Router, you can run it on 2 gig. Like you don't have to run it on 4 gig RAM. You can just run it on 2 gig. So that'll save you a little bit more RAM to do other things on Linux. Linux, you can also push it down to 2 gig. Same thing. You can push it down to 2 gig. The first thing you need to do, of course, is you set up your router. You set up all the virtual machines. So you set up your router, you set up the interfaces, you set up the domain controller virtual machines. Just do the OS installation, and you put the static IPs and try pinging each other. Okay, so just try pinging each other first. When that's all good, you know that there is connectivity now. So the router is working. Start building your domain controllers now. Start promoting the server to a domain controller. Okay, start building your domain. When you finish building up your domain, the step after that you're going to do is your replication. Make sure the replication works fine. When you finish your replication, everything is good. Now start with your Active Directory administration. So that is your group policy. So start with your group policy, deploy a Windows 10 client and do some testing. Get that done, get that out of the way. So you know that part one is done and it's out of the way. Then you start with part two, and that is your DFS. And then you start your certificate server. And then when you finish, finally you do the last bit, which is your Linux. Okay. So when you do all of that, you'll have 7 virtual machines, but really it shouldn't, like it's totally doable on a 32 gig if you use pfSense here. If you use pfSense. Okay. So if you have pfSense with Linux, oh yeah, it's totally doable. And pfSense is not that hard. There are a bunch of, if you don't know how to configure pfSense router, super easy, you'll be shocked. But there's a bunch of YouTube videos that tells you how to do it. Okay, any questions so far regarding the topology? Again, we're going to get into the details later. I'll show you guys an example of what that looks like because you have to use Visio. So I'll show you an example of Visio. But this is just a sort of a rough idea of what you guys are expecting to do during your implementation. And of course, when you're setting up your when you're setting up your project design, you'll have to do the topology, and then you have to do the logical diagram of your Active Directory. So logical diagram of your Active Directory is going to look like this. I'm going to show you an example of it as well, so you don't have to worry. So you'll look like this. So that's my first domain. This is my second domain. This is now my child domain. And this one is linked to this. And then you're going to do some OU structures over here. Okay, I'm going to have one OU, second OU. This is going to have 2 sub OUs. Okay, so it's like, so you'll also have your OU structures done over here as well. Something very similar here. Also your OU structure based on the business case. Again, you have to organize your OU structures based on departments. So that is your logical layout, right? So this is your logical AD design, and there is the physical design, which is this. Okay. No, so first you have to set up your, first you set up your router, then you set up your, so here, let me just write. When we get closer to the implementation, we'll discuss that. So first, set up your router. So number 1, router. Number 2, VMs, server VMs. VMs for DCs. Okay. Ping between subnets or remote server to DCs. And then after you promote your server to DCs, you're gonna do replication between DCs. So this is really the steps, sort of. And then start with step number 6, and that is number 6, and that is your AD admin, which is based on part 1, again, available in part 1. And then number 7, move to part 2. So that's usually the sequence. Cool? Makes sense? So that's usually the sequence of implementation. Don't start implementation yet. Wait. So we're going to go through the project charter. We're going to go through the designs, 2 designs. We're going to look at the schedule. We're going to do the risk register. Risk register, so it says, okay, what happens if your laptop got destroyed, got stolen, whatever it is? What are you going to do to continue the project? What happens if one of your VMs got corrupted? What are you going to do? So that's your risk register. So you have to manage your own issues. This is what I'm trying to say. You come to me and telling me, Sami, my VMs are corrupted. Okay, good luck. What do you want me to do? You have to manage your own project. This is your own project. You have to manage it. right? And so tick tock, because the time is ticking now. So so the time is ticking, right? So we still have our official review. You tell me, oh, my laptop got burned or whatever it is. Yeah, you still didn't do implement anything. So see you next term, I guess. Right? So it's really like it's up to you. Like so those you manage your own project is what I'm saying. You have to manage your own issues too. Um, this happened. It does happen. So one of the students, his hard disk got fried. Um, he went and he borrowed another laptop from the library. Another student, also his laptop, he started getting blue screens. He went and he got a refurbished laptop from Memory Express just to continue the project. I said, yeah, we still have our official review date. On the official review date, if you don't show me your work, you failed. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You failed anyway, so it doesn't matter. So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, so just keep that in mind. The way we run Capstone is a little bit different than other courses. In other courses, there may be a little bit, there's some flexibility, but in Capstone, you have to do it. There's no other way of going around this, really. Okay. Um, so I talked about that. Do you guys have any questions so far? Anybody? Stop sharing. Questions so far? Anybody? Anybody? Going once, going twice. So remember, next week I'll update the templates for phase 1 and 2, and also for phase 4. So I'll update the templates on Brightspace, and then Monday we start recording and we start the project right away. So just keep that in mind. So 3 weeks planning, they're back-to-back submissions, 3 weeks planning, and then we start implementation. Can we use routers that we used to use through our courses? Oh yeah, of course. Of course you can. So something else to keep in mind, let me share my screen. Um, that is, if you want to go and troubleshoot everything on those routers, go for it. But let me go back and share my screen. Something else to keep in mind, you will have a specific set of subnets that you must follow. So you open up subnets, that's the Excel sheet. Why is it like that? Okay, download, open up Excel. Okay, so what we have here, I'm going to put your names down. So you see student 1, so you have 3 subnets, right? So I'm going to put the names down just to make it ready for next week. So student 1, let's assume that's Carson, for example. So Carson will have 3 subnets. Those are the 3 subnets that he has to use. So he can't pick his own 3 subnets. No, it has to be that. Okay. And let's assume this is Joe, for example. Joe is going to pick those 3 subnets. So you have very specific subnets that you have to use. Okay. Otherwise, people will start sharing their projects with each other and it's going to get messy, right? So keep in mind that you'll have specific set of subnets to use across those 3 different sites. Okay, specific subnets, specific range of IPs. Okay. So so I'll write, see where it says student 1, student 2. I'm going to start adding names before Monday, just so you guys know. You'll also see it on Brightspace. When your name is there, those are the subnets that you have to use. It's not up for discussion. So okay. So, any questions so far? Anybody? Questions for me? More importantly, did that ice cream truck go away, or is... Oh, goodness. Yep, absolutely. Oh, goodness. Oh, so what do you guys want to talk about? Nothing? You guys want to chill and go enjoy your weekend? Ice cream flavors. I like mint chocolate. Yeah. Just the vanilla guy. Parsec? What is that? Ice cream? Is that ice cream too? I'm guessing not. It's an RDP application. No, I don't think I've heard of it. Nope. How good is it? Is it good? No? Oh, nice. Oh, I remember something. Thank you for bringing that up. Um, I remember during COVID, students were accessing the lab environment using Google Desktop. Is it called Google Desktop or Google Remote Desktop? I can't remember the name. I was doing the setup for them, and so it's a feature. It's free, by the way. Google Remote Desktop. So what happens if you have a Google account? You can go to a computer, you sign up, you sort of start the application on that computer. It's just on the browser, right? You don't do anything, just on the browser, and then you can go home. When you log into your Google account, you can connect to that machine. So students were connecting to the lab environment at NATE to do the work, right? To do all their coursework and whatever during COVID. Um, the cybersecurity team at NATE started complaining about it, saying, "Oh, there's a lot of command and control going on. It shows up on their firewall logs and their intrusion detection system that there is a command and control going on, right?" So command and control is like when you drop a backdoor and then it connects back to the attacker. We looked at all of this in 1534 in the IT threat analysis course. Um, where there is a backdoor, you can drop a backdoor and then connects back uh, to the attacker using Metasploit, right? So from a network transaction point of view, it makes it look like you're using it makes it look like you are using Metasploit to do trying to access someone else's computer, right? Which again, from a log point of view, but they don't know that you're actually trying to access your computer from home. They don't know that. So they started sending me messages. Hey, what's going on in your classroom right now? What do you mean, what's going on in my class? What's going on in my classroom? People are doing this. Yeah, they're trying to access their home computer. No, they shouldn't do that. What do you mean they shouldn't do that? Like they're accessing their home computer. Well, it shows up in our logs that this is the remote. Well, then too bad for you. Then go flag it as false positive. Like, what do you want me to do? Like that, we need this for an education standpoint, right? And so they started complaining about it and they're saying, "Oh no, we cannot do that," and that caused a lot of issues. So students started using VPN instead. So VPN does not look like you are using command and control because you're VPN, right? And so it wasn't um, it wasn't um, sort of intrusive. Like that's not the intent of it. But anyway, VPN addresses that issue. So VPN addresses that issue. So just say no. Um, but they don't offer VPN anymore. No. Yeah. And so yeah, if they flag you, let me know. Yep. 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 Any questions so far? Anybody? Before you guys go, chill and enjoy the weekend. Somebody posted a question. Can we start anything this weekend on Capstone or should we wait until Monday? Let's wait until Monday because I'm going to update the templates that we're going to use. So Monday is like when we officially start on the project. All right. If we guys don't have any questions, then have a great weekend. Go chill, relax, watch Netflix. Have a good time.